Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Krista and Ed show.
Hi.
Krista, Ed, welcome. We're so excited today. We have a special guest. Her name is Lindsay Marino. She's an international psychic medium, a school teacher, a radio host, and also a co-author of a #1 bestseller called 365 Days of Angel Prayers. Welcome, Lindsay. You're from Tampa, so I know it's probably warm there and it's still a little bit chilly here, but how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you both for having me. Yeah, it's nice and toasty here. I'm from Boston, so I'm used to cold weather and warm in the summer, but it's in Tampa, Florida. It's warm all year round.
Awesome. We actually were just in Florida in January, and I was like, oh, I could totally live here.
Yeah.
Like, for real. The temperature was amazing. It was like perfect. And
in January, it's like the perfect time.
Yeah. So welcome, Lindsay. We are so excited to have you here. Just to get started, I was hoping that you could share some of your story with us. I know that you did go to school to be a school teacher, and along that journey, some stuff happened in your life that has brought you to where you are today. So if you don't mind just sharing your story a little bit so our listeners and viewers can get to know you a bit, and then we'll dive into, I don't know, other things.
Okay, perfect. So yes, I went to University of Tampa to go to school for teaching. I got my undergrad and graduate school degree in teaching, and I was excited to be a teacher. I taught third grade for 7 years in an inner city school, and I loved it. But it was my second day of teaching that actually everything shifted. So, when you graduate from college or when you are in transition in your life, you get excited about the next thing. For me, I had these plans of my future with someone named Nicholas, and we had planned on getting married and to travel. And it was my second day of teaching the third grade when we were supposed to babysit for a family friend. And when he didn't show up, I started to get really nervous. And finally, when I called, a state trooper picked up the phone and said that he had passed away. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. And everything stopped. And from that moment, I was just kind of going through the motions of life. I really didn't want to get out of bed. And I started to really focusing on the kids that I was teaching. And when that was happening, I started to receive signs from him and messages, and I had visitations. And from there, everything started to ignite within my intuition and connecting in with those that have passed. So that's kind of how everything started. And that's just like a small version of the story.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. That's interesting. So now that's what you're doing. You do readings and connecting people with their loved ones.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, in my mind, I was thinking, I just want to connect with Nick. That was my goal, was to connect in with him, because I was really having a tough time where one second he was here and the next second it was like gone. Everything that I had planned went away. And I was really in a difficult spot. But what ended up happening was, in that moment, when I started to get signs and messages from him, I realized how healing it was for me and how there was so much beyond what we could see with the human eye. And I said, well, let me say a prayer that I can help other people, to let them know that their loved ones are around. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. People started to come to me for readings, and I was giving free readings for a few years, actually, before I started my business. And what happened was when you do something that you love and you're passionate about it, it does take your time and energy, and there's value in it. And you have to have some sort of energy exchange to come back. Yes. So I realized my psychic medium readings were getting very busy, and I started to charge people. Okay. And then what happened was I got so busy with that it was time. I couldn't just be locked into the school system. I had to make a choice. Yeah. And that's when I started my business. So I teach others how to tune into their intuition, and I teach other psychic mediums how to run their online businesses too.
Wow.
Oh, I love it.
That's awesome.
I love it so much. Like we talked beforehand, and people who know me, those who don't are going to know this now. I am very, intuitive myself, not because, I've learned from anybody. It's just from, plugging in to myself, listening to signs and not dismissing things anymore as a coincidence. Right.
Yeah.
When you talk about the energy, I find that interesting because I'm very sensitive to energy. And for a long time, I also, have anxiety and all that kind of stuff. But for a long time, I held that in, and I sort of took it as, there's something wrong with me, But as I've been going through my spiritual journey and really listening to myself, I've realized that anxiety, a lot of it is just energy that I'm like a sponge to energy, regardless if it's positive or negative, right? So it's really, for me, and you can, maybe touch on it if you want for people listening, like it's making sure that as much as I take in, that there's that release, like you said, the exchange, I suppose, or I become almost crippled in it, if that makes sense. Until something happens or I hear something, then the release is like, okay, I knew. It's like I can feel other people's stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it feels. Because I grew up with a lot of anxiety, like even in my household. It was just they don't even know, you don't know that you're living in it until you get out of it, really.
Right.
But I think I was always sensitive as a kid. And like you said, it's one of those things where if you don't use it, it is crippling. And my husband always says, if you don't use the energy, it's going to electrocute you. That's
wow.
Oh, I feel even more normal.
I know, yes. That's what a lot of people say. They're like, I feel normal now that other people are feeling this. And I think that's the big thing. It's almost like it's a blessing that you have this spiritual awakening when it's happening. Yeah. But in the process, you feel like you're going crazy because you're feeling so much. Yeah. But I think if we use our intuition and our energy in our business and in our life, it makes it so much more magical, and we don't feel drained and we don't feel stuck.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask you that next, because you also, in our pre-conversation, we have so many good ones before and after too. You talked about how, using intuition and stuff in business kind of go hand in hand. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like, a lot of psychic mediums come to me to learn about the online business, but I have successful businesses from people. They come in, the business owners, and they want readings. They want psychic readings around their business or their life. And what I recognized is we all have that feeling inside in our life and our business. When we walk into a room, we walk in and we can feel the energy. We either feel comfortable or we feel uncomfortable. And this isn't just from like social anxiety. This is from, I'm talking about when you pick up on people's vibes, So I think what happens is sometimes people need the confirmation that they're on the right track, but I always try to teach my students or even people getting readings from me, listen, you already knew this. Everything that I'm sharing with you, it's already been within you. You just needed this confirmation, but really sometimes you can learn how to tune in yourself. And I think that if all of the successful business owners like Oprah, even Einstein, he talked about using his intuition. They're very open about talking about that. And I think if we're aware of that power that we have inside and we act on it immediately instead of second guessing it, it's going to make the business flow even more. We're going to be on a better frequency. We're going to be more clear about the information that comes through. We're not going to look for outside opinions. We're just going to know in our heart, like, this is what needs to be done.
Because, our minds are so powerful, right? And we're always stuck here. But when you are in alignment and you are, like you said, that feeling, that thought, whatever it is, that is usually what feels 100% right to you, right? So if we could just find the way, and you know what, I say that and whatever, it's easier said than done too. Right. I'm all over the place too. Like sometimes I'm like, whoa, where did this windstorm come from?
I get electrocuted.
Do you?
Yeah. Also get the energy, and then it comes to me, right?
Well, it's really hard sometimes with us because I feel like I see it so clearly.
Yeah.
And I believe, and I have so much trust in the universe and what I feel and what I believe in, that I'm like, why do you even need to question it, right? But I also realize that I have to slow it down too and be like, okay, you know, like.
Well, it's funny you're talking about that, because there's also energy givers and energy takers. And being in business, and I had an ad agency for 10 years and a lot of digital marketing. And so over the years, I've had people come into my life who at the time I didn't really realize, but I didn't trust my gut. Right. I would see them and they're like, hey, they've got this idea, da, da, da. And she's like, what are you doing? And then it turns into,
have to meet people to be like,
there was a client I had in the auto industry, and you know, she's like, I'm telling you. And of course, you know, 2 years later, but it's like where they were taking and I'm giving, and it is not a reciprocal relationship. It was very one-sided. And I've had a pattern of doing that, whether it's like, I see they need the energy and I'm giving it, and then going, she's like,
but it's not a bad, like he's a very, you know, giving and trusting person. Right. I'm unfortunately, I don't like that I don't trust so easily, you know, so I'm almost on the other side. So that's why
you guys remind me of me and my husband, actually. Like it's so funny.
Where's Tony? He should be here.
I know he's downstairs. I should have had him on here with me. You'll have to talk to him at a different point, or we'll have to come on together. Because it's I mean, he has such a big heart. Like same, you know, we both do, but I sometimes feel like it takes a little bit for me to let people in. It takes me a little bit because I'm kind of feeling it out. And I understand that, like when you're empathic, you want to help people and you want to see the good in everyone. But then there's this intuitive piece where you're like, I don't know why I'm getting this, but this is what's happening. And you got to act on it. And sometimes I was trying to pull Tony along, like really quickly, like, this is what we need to do. He's like, I'm not ready right now. I wanted to speed it up.
Because you probably feel like I do, where you're like, I can see it so clearly, there's a question, just follow me, just listen.
exactly Now I feel like he's more on board, like but it's one of those things, it's like a process. And then when you start to work together, you come on that same frequency. It's like when two or more minds come together and they have that same intention, the same focus, it creates harmony, and then it speeds up the process of business even more. And I think that's why it's so important to work with people that you do trust and that they're on the same energy and they have the same passion and love for whatever it is that you're doing.
Absolutely. Sorry, my 4-year-old is here, so he's trying really hard to stay around the corner.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. So, okay. That's so awesome. So you have a book called 365 Days of Angel Prayers. Tell me about your book. I'm going to assume that you wrote that book because, you know, this is a passion of yours and you want to help as many people as they can. But what was the inspiration? And tell me about.
Okay. So this is interesting because I feel like I am part of the book and I'm a co-author. I don't consider it mine necessarily because there were, I don't know how many hundreds of people actually that are intuitive or any kind of person that wanted to contribute to the book. I was asked to contribute a page. So I wrote a prayer in the book and it circulated around and it became the #1 bestseller. And I'm like, how did this, it's almost like I didn't even have to try. People came to me and they said, you should be a part of this. It was kind of circulating. And it was one of those things where I felt like, you know what, I want to contribute to this. I want to be a part of it. And I created a prayer in it and it's 1 page. But I feel like the energy of it going out into the world is so powerful to have that circulated with other authors or other people that are writing. I do have a book inside of me that needs to be finished. I've already started writing. It just needs to get finished and go out there with my story. So hopefully that will be out at some point within the next couple of years.
So I'm kind of curious, like, really, when we talk about psychics and mediums and things like that's a small niche. It's not like going to university or going somewhere and then having a clear path as to how to even manage your time, how to, make sure your time is worth what it's worth, creating structure from a business side. So I find that very intriguing, because I would suspect, and I don't know for sure, but a lot of people, like, it's like this energy, and they can see things, and they want to share. And like you said, that you did a lot of kind of readings and helping people because it was a release for you, and it was also sharing. But at some point you go, wait a minute, like, this is a business and it has to be run like a business. And
right.
You want to maybe talk a little bit about that, because that's important.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny because going from third grade teacher thinking that I was going to be with the kids and retire as a teacher is total opposite of what I'm doing now. So I feel like I learned the hard way, because there was some times that I was up late at night crying because of technology, trying to put my courses online and figure that out. And I remember my husband he was going to college to be a teacher, and I was doing the business thing. And I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe this. I'm overwhelmed. And I was giving a lot of energy and doing readings. But what I realized was, in any business, especially the intuitive business, or if you're highly sensitive and aware of this sort of thing, there has to be an energetic balance of like life and business. Mm-hmm. So I realized the hard way that I was doing too many readings one week. I remember going home to Boston, and I was there, and everyone kept saying, I want you to do a reading for me. I need you to do a reading before you leave for the summer. So I remember jamming in a bunch of readings one week. And by the end of it, and this was at the beginning of my business, I'm like, I don't like this right now. I don't like the feeling of this. I left third grade teaching, but I don't like what I feel right now. And what I recognized is I was going off of other people's schedules instead of what was right for me. So I started to realize, how many things do I really want to do in a day, and how many days do I want to do readings? Mm-hmm. So setting aside a time of when I wanted to work and how many days was so big for me. And I feel like any business owner that's listening to this might benefit too, because when you think about it, we sometimes leave these jobs because we feel restricted or we want to follow our passion. And they cut out the time that this is a 9-to-5 job or a 7-to-4 job. But we can create our own hours. And sometimes you can forget that because society puts this stamp on, time.
Trade dollars for hours, right?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think if we just pay attention to the energy that we're putting out, and once you start to feel like you're energetically drained, I always feel like, okay, let me check in with myself. Are my prices where they need to be? Yeah. If I'm drained and I'm giving so much, am I getting the value in return? And also, how are my boundaries with people in general? Do I have things in place, or is there something I need to tweak? And I think not being afraid to tweak things in business is so important. Instead of saying, oh, I probably shouldn't change this because I just created it. But really, that's your intuition working.
Yes. Mm. Yeah. And you know what? It's true. It's interesting because I did work in the corporate world for 15 years before I, jumped on my entrepreneurship journey. And it took a long time for my brain to stop working exactly the way you described it. And for me to realize, and I still remind myself now that, hey, wait, this is my business. I get to do what I want with it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not written in stone, where you have to be careful when you're creative, crazy, like I have a new idea every minute. Yeah. It's not everything all the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But
there's balance there, right? Like we literally went to the Rocky Mountains last week, and Krista was like, "Let's go," and I'm like,
He's still newly getting out of.
I gotta work. I got stuff to do. Yeah. We'll do it from there.
That feeling.
We'll just do it from there. And I went, "Oh, yeah, we can, right?" And then kind of like you said about boundaries, I struggle with that. Like I'll have a client text me at 10 o'clock at night. Right.
Okay.
And so that's a struggle that I've had where I kind of like the other part, the analogy where I'm like an energy giver, and then there have been people in my life that I'm bad about the boundary part where there's a relationship there, they become friends almost. And so then
but it's just boundaries. And the thing is, when you set them, people don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's so
then they don't know, right?
And then if you don't have the boundaries in place and they test them and they don't even know they're doing it, you become resentful to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize after, did I have anything in place? But I get it. I know that it's so easy to fall into that trap. I actually, for my readings, they book on the website. Normally my clients do, but I was using my cell phone. Like, I don't know how it works in Canada too with this. I'm guessing it's the same thing. If you have Google Voice, do you have Google Voice calls? They can call a certain phone number and it's connected to Google and it rings to your cell phone. Well, I was having that happen at the beginning of my business. So I didn't know that it was going to be a business call. And it was like, I was always on, and then I was getting text messages on my phone and I was getting frustrated. Yeah. I'm like, wait, I'm getting frustrated because they're giving me business.
Yeah.
But it's because I don't have my boundaries in place, and I'm saying I'm not texting to do the phone reading. So now I have a separate business line. I don't text, and I even leave that on the voicemail. Yeah. If you text, we can't write back. This is the business phone, but normally they all book online.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Even just with our podcast, with the exception that I opened up some more time here, you know, we had our calendar open for whatever was available when we first started. And then we're like, you know, all over the place. But now, like, Tuesdays are our dedicated day, right?
Typically, yeah.
That we just, we know on Tuesday, that's what we're doing. There's nothing else that's booked there, and that's that, right? And you know, when we open it up for more, people choose their days, but it's fine. If people want to be a part of it and they want what you have, they're going to book for the times you set. So don't be afraid that you're losing business or whatever if you're not setting those boundaries.
That's so true. And I feel like when people have too many options, it gives them a chance to think too much. You know, it's almost like when you have limited options, like the human brain, like, makes it easier.
Yeah, like imagine you go to a restaurant and there's no space to line up. What do you think happens to people? They just like scatter and they're confused. So you have to like direct them.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for both people.
That's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. Somehow that brought up a TED Talks, and there was a lady talking about selection, and you know, the more selection you have, the less you actually select. It overwhelms.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I know this is a little side, but it's a great watch if you're wanting to. It's like when you're doing business and you're coming up with stuff and you have way too many packages, and then people just don't select a package because they're overwhelmed with too much.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true. That makes so much sense. I'm going to check out that TED Talk because I always talk about that with my students.
Yes.
Things, so it's not as confusing.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could talk forever here.
I know.
Really. So we need to have another one with
I would love that.
Tony,
because
we'd love to know about that dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be challenges in that as well. So would you talk a little bit about that? Because you guys are working together like we do.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I can't wait to be back on because I could talk for hours too. So I feel like, so this is the thing that actually changed us working together, because at the beginning we were trying to figure out a system of, okay, when are we turning on for business and when are we turning off? Yeah. But the pivotal moment that changed everything was when Tony said, why don't we do meetings like we did in the school system? I think that we need to have weekly meetings. So I was totally like, okay, I guess we can have a meeting. I didn't think that it was going to be as powerful that it really is. It's changed everything. So, and luckily we figured this out at the very beginning. So what it is we just have a worksheet. Every Friday we meet, and we have a worksheet that's a template, very simple. The very top of the worksheet says positive praise, and we go through positive praise for the other person. So what they did in business, you know, for that week. So like, you did a great job, you know, contacting my clients, and you had a positive attitude while you did it, you know, whatever it may be. Or every morning he brings me smoothies. He makes breakfast in the morning, and I always, before my readings, he'll hand me the smoothie. Is that what you do too? So, okay, perfect. So it's very similar, and it feels really good. And sometimes, what's that?
Or I won't eat.
Or she won't eat.
No, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I totally get it. So it's almost like you need that reminder of someone. So you could easily take it for granted thinking, oh, this is served to me every day. But when you actually put it down on paper, it makes you really remember how grateful you are for whatever it is that they did or whatever they did in the business. We also track numbers. So we go through our courses, and he has an empath course, and I have my intuition and my mediumship program and the business program. So we track the numbers and start to notice the pattern. And we write down at the end of the month, we calculate everything. And we even have action steps for the following week or the things that we did this week. And you know what's funny? I started to recognize when we went on vacation, we went to North Carolina in the mountains, and I said, I just want to get away and go and do nothing. And when I left for that trip, it's almost like your energy is freeing up for space for you to just allow things to happen and have fun. That's when so many more sales came in when I was doing nothing. It was like the energy was moving because we were in alignment.
Wow.
Yeah, that happened this week for us.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And then I was like, do you see, Ed? Do you see this is the life we can have? We don't have to be like 8 hours a day or I did nothing.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You just shift where you're focusing your time. And I feel
we travel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to send us that checklist, that meeting. Because I'm a meeting guy and she's not. She's like, what, really? You want to have a meeting?
It's probably not as detailed that you think it would be, but it's powerful just sitting down and doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are still trying to find our balance and you know, whatever there. So I could see that being powerful. The way you explained it is great. I was worried you wanted to have a meeting, and I didn't want to.
No,
no, I'm just kidding.
I've been in a lot of meetings to have meetings, to plan meetings.
But you know, and this is another thing, and just being honest, like where we're different that way, where I'm very like on the fly and, you know, and he's maybe a bit more structured. So I'm also learning that like I have to also give a little too, right?
Yeah.
For us to both like, okay, well, if this is what works for you, then I gotta.
This is being recorded, you know.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying, I know it's a real dynamic.
I'm a pattern guy. Like even in the morning, like I have a checklist. And so like the green smoothie thing in the morning, I would like to, you know, this is the things that need to be done.
Tony does the same thing. He has notes. He has notes he writes down. Same thing.
Yeah.
But I see those things and I immediately almost get anxiety. I'm like, I don't want to be committed to anything right
He's
now.
like,
that's exactly me. That's my thing. I don't commit to, like, I don't want to commit to certain things. Like, I just want to do it.
You know,
We need to come to Tampa for a visit.
When we first started dating, he always says this story. He knows this about me now. But, like, we went out for the first time, I think, on a Tuesday. And then he's like, hey, what are you doing Friday? And I'm like, I'm not sure. Call me on Friday. And I'm being myself. Like, I'm like, I don't understand. And he talks about it now where he's like, you know, then Wednesday, he's like, hey, what are you doing on Friday? Do you want to go for dinner? I'm like, I'm not sure. You'll have to call me on Friday. Like, I don't know what I'm going to feel like doing that day.
Exactly. So that's how I am. That's exactly how I am. The one thing Tony and I always start talking about is, you know, when friends say, what are you doing next week? We don't like to commit to plans really, but when it comes to routine, that's when everything is scheduled. Even down to our podcast together, we did the video podcast and Tony's like, okay, what bullet points should we touch on? And sometimes I do have bullet points, but other times I go off on a tangent with the story and he's like, okay, so what's next on the bullet point? Because we have to stay in track with time. But it's almost like working together and having that balance, which is actually why it's great to have a relationship like that, because you have the balance. You need one person, you know, like that.
Yeah, because if you were both the same, then it just wouldn't work the same either, right? You need
you don't get the same level of leveling up, right?
And challenge. It's always good to have a challenge.
That's true. That's so true.
I'm a challenge, is what she's saying.
I'm sure I'm probably more of the challenge.
All I can say is I've got quite the
10. I know.
I was a lobster yesterday. Like I was like, Anyway.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best, going and relaxing outdoors too.
So I just want to ask you, I feel like I might know the answer, but what is your superpower, Lindsay?
I feel like using my intuition, always using it and acting on my intuition. I feel like that's that's my superpower that stands out to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome.
That's one of your superpowers too, I think, intuition. Yeah.
I can totally see that too.
Yeah.
It's a powerful one.
Yeah, it is. Do you have a question to ask us? You can try and stump us, or...
I know. I'm trying to think of a good question to ask both of you. Yeah. So if something comes intuitively to you, do you say it right away, or do you wait a little bit and then say it? Or do you kind of hold it in your mind and think, should I act on this? I always wonder that about certain business owners.
Well, I say it right away because I get very excited now.
Yeah.
And especially now that he's always known it about me, but I think like in the last year, especially, he's very like, okay, Krista, like he'll even ask me like, Krista, what do you think here? Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited that I have somebody so close to me that I can just keep up to date, even throughout the day, if I have a thought or something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, I used to say to him, I'll be like, well, this is going to happen in like 3 to 8 days or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. And he'd laugh at me and then there'd be a sign or something would happen. So I think now I'm really trying to act on it right away, where I used to take things and I would analyze it. I would overthink it. I would make excuses and start to do that. Oh, I think I'm just going crazy and I'm reading too much into this type of a thing. But now I'm able to recognize that feeling that's familiar, that I know when it's right or if it's just me being tired or whatever,
Yes.
Okay. Literally yesterday, we were in the Rocky Mountains driving back, and she predicted I was going to get a speeding ticket. I haven't had a speeding ticket in years. And I'm on the foothills, like left the mountains, and I'm cruising along. I don't know what was, I'm distracted and anyways, we come up over the hill and
it happened.
It's like, really?
Oh my gosh.
For me, this is where I was coming from, because it was like 11 and checkout is like 11. And he's like, okay, Krista, we gotta go. We gotta get back to the city. And I'm like, well, what's your rush? Right. And then I'm like, I got that instant feeling I get. And then I'm like, the universe is going to slow you down. He's like, well, what are you doing? I said, you're going to get stopped. And he's like, where are we going to go? And then I'm like, I told you. Like, I was like
oh. Right.
Anyways, whatever. That could have been a coincidence.
I know that feeling.
But I was like,
No, intuitive nudges.
So I would say that there was a time where I didn't act on it. I didn't say it out loud. I kept it. And maybe it's because I didn't feel like I could, or I had anybody that I could express it with. But now it's different. It's exciting to me because it doesn't happen all the time. Yeah. So when there is something, it just is like, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I got a little guy. He's like freaking out.
Okay. So.
Oh, it's the universe speaking.
Yeah.
The children speak.
You know what? We're letting him play video games to keep him distracted. So I think he got to a new level. So he's excited.
Yeah. He's excited about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So that was a great question. Thanks for asking it.
You're welcome.
So if our listeners or viewers want to get in touch with you, Lindsay, how can they do that?
So they can go to my website, lindsaymarino.com. I'm also on Facebook at Lindsay Marino and on Instagram, Lindsay Marino Medium.
Okay.
Nice.
So those are the things that I use a lot, Facebook and Instagram, and of course my website. There's tons of stuff, tons of classes and different blogs about all of these topics.
Okay, great.
Great.
So we'll be sure to share those links as well.
Yep.
And you guys will be able to listen to this on iTunes. We also do share it on our YouTube channel and Facebook. So yeah. Is there anything else that you
No, this was a great conversation.
I love talking with you.
We want to have Tony and you on again.
Yes.
That would
definitely
be a great time. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time. So
yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. I love talking with you. It went by so quick.
I know it did. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.